so badly, and Harry too, that I wanted to know what happened before. What was her life about? And all this, what we've seen this last week, is absolute media manipulation of the most extraordinary kind. First of all, this dancing at the Beyonce concert, and doesn't visit him, and talks about family values. These are two real imposters. And what is really annoying is
she threatens lawsuits over headlines, yet stayed silent when an entire book dissected her life, raising one question: what did Tom Bower reveal that Meghan Markle couldn't legally challenge?
Interviewed around sort of 80 sources, I think it was, for this book. Now, I mean, the majority of those people were willing to speak relatively negatively about Meghan, so some would then suggest that the book is biased.
Let's begin with the silence, not the calm, comforting kind, but the heavy, uncomfortable kind where everyone notices and waits for a reaction. When Tom Bower released Revenge in 2022, the world fully expected Meghan Markle to respond the way she usually does: legal threats, sharp statements, and carefully brief sources close to Meghan dismissing the claims as false, unfair, or rooted in misogyny. That pattern was familiar, yet this time there was no pushback at all, no lawsuits, no public outrage, no emotional interview to reframe the narrative, just a complete, unmistakable silence that spoke louder than any statement ever could.
It's not biased in the sense that I do my very best to balance it, and there's a lot of good things about Meghan there. She's ambitious, she's good looking, she is determined, she succeeded in getting a good script with suits and everything.
To be clear, Meghan has weathered negative press many times before: tabloids, hostile commentators, viral social media threads, and lengthy opinion pieces tearing into her character never truly slowed her down. She's faced it all and learned how to deflect, dismiss, or counter it with confidence and experience. That kind of criticism became almost routine. But Tom Bower was something else entirely. He wasn't a gossip blogger or loud TV pundit chasing clicks. He was a veteran investigative journalist with a long record of legally vetted exposés, and that distinction changed everything, because this wasn't noise she could simply brush aside.
His interviews about his father and his brother, and he comes to England, makes no attempt to visit his father or brother, makes no attempt to apologize for his past behavior.
This wasn't a random blogger armed with Wi-Fi and an opinion. Tom Bower is a seasoned investigative biographer with decades of experience and a legal team that understands precisely where the line is and how to stand firmly on the right side of it. When Bower publishes a claim, it isn't based on rumor or hearsay. It's built on documents, on record sources, and careful legal vetting. He doesn't trade in gossip, he assembles evidence. That's what made Revenge so dangerous. Every allegation carried weight, context, and receipts, leaving little room for denial and even less space for a legal counterattack.
She's good looking, she is determined, she succeeded in getting a good script with suits and everything, and in the end she succeeded in getting a man.
He didn't base his work on a single angry source or one bitter former friend. Instead, he spoke to dozens of people: former staff members, longtime friends, industry insiders, and contacts from entirely different chapters of Meghan's life, many of whom had never crossed paths. These individuals came from separate worlds, different timelines, and unrelated circumstances, yet their accounts echoed one another in unsettling ways. When stories line up across backgrounds and years, they stop sounding like personal grudges or online hate. That's when a narrative shifts. It's no longer about isolated criticism. It starts to look like a consistent pattern, and patterns are far harder to dismiss.
Anyway, afford them any
so
respect
even though
whatsoever.
the Invictus Games is a great cause,
Yep.
it used to be a brilliant thing, actually, because their behaviour is so...
Here's the part Meghan likely hated the most. Bower didn't yell accusations or lean on hyperbole. He presented carefully constructed timelines, detailed sequences, and clear events, letting readers draw their own conclusions. That's journalist proof writing, rigorous, methodical, and difficult to challenge. Unlike tabloids or bloggers whose claims she could threaten or dismiss, this book came armored with evidence, context, and a structure that minimized outright bias. Every chapter was supported by documentation and multiple corroborating sources. That's why, for once, Meghan's usual arsenal of lawsuits and public rebuttals stayed unused. The usual legal thunder never arrived because there was nothing easy to attack.
Not by Harry, but by the administrators. And it is terrific for the contestants. I'm all for that. But the Sussexes are using it for their own
magazine.
When Revenge dropped, the world held its breath, not wondering if Meghan would respond, but how she would. Would it be a glossy magazine interview, a dramatic My Truth moment, or carefully crafted statement denouncing the book as misleading? After all, Meghan has built her reputation on managing narrative swiftly and decisively, often very publicly. Quick responses, sharp statements, and high-profile rebuttals are part of her brand, yet this time none of that happened. No interview, no statement, no social media pushback for the first time in a long while. She stayed completely silent, letting the book speak for itself.
I think that the victims are obviously the people I looked for, because she did her very best to prevent her friends and the people she'd worked with.
Weeks went by, and Revenge continued to dominate headlines and sell relentlessly. Excerpts spread across social media, news clips circulated, and commentators dissected every claim, yet Meghan remained completely silent. There was no official denial, no detailed rebuttal, no public statements addressing the book's content. The only hints came from vague, anonymous sources suggesting that legal action might be under consideration. Always considered, never actually pursued. The months passed, and the murmurs never materialized into anything concrete. The usual rapid, forceful responses that had defined her public strategy were absent, leaving the book unchallenged and the narrative firmly in Bauer's control.
They're trying to separate their brands.
They're desperate. What's interesting is they haven't got a platform anymore. No magazine is going to interview Meghan Markle anymore. Spotify and Netflix are not going to commission them to do more.
Months later, Meghan's silence had become impossible to overlook. Conversations shifted. People weren't just discussing what Bauer had written, they were questioning why she had said a word, ignoring a full-length biography of your own life. Isn't absent-mindedness or forgetfulness? It's deliberate. Every day without a response only amplified the book's impact and allowed the narrative to stand unchallenged for the public and media alike. The question became unavoidable: was this calculated strategy a choice to stay above the fray, or was it fear of what might happen if she spoke? Either way, the silence spoke louder than any statement ever could.
And it was just ridiculous how difficult it was to get to people who I genuinely wanted to hear the good side of her from. But obviously, she is a person who controls the narrative. She controls people. She ghosts people like her father or the royal family when she doesn't like them.
And haste the challenge with waiting too long. Silence begins to take on meaning when someone doesn't respond. The absence of pushback can start to look like agreement, or at least quiet acceptance. Every day Meghan stayed silent. The story shifted. By the time she could have issued a response, the narrative had already begun to settle into public consciousness. Media outlets grew bolder, no longer hesitating to analyze or debate the book's claims. YouTubers, podcasters, and commentators who might have tread carefully before suddenly felt free to dissect every detail without Meghan's usual statements to counter them. Bauer's work started to appear airtight. What might have once seemed like exaggeration or rumor began to read as carefully documented reporting, and that's the problem. Once a narrative solidifies, trying to fight it can have the opposite effect. Responding after the fact wouldn't project control or authority. It would seem reactive, almost desperate. Meghan understands optics better than most. Timing, perception, and presentation are her tools. By staying silent, she may have avoided an immediate confrontation, but the longer the silence continued, the more entrenched the story became, leaving her with fewer options to shift the narrative without looking defensive.
Difficult for him, Tom, is that things are just working out brilliantly for the Prince and Princess of Wales. I mean,
She
you've got
looked
William's
terrific
trip
today.
coming up, and talk to me about this visit.
I
This was quite bold, wasn't it?
It was bold, but she looks terrific. I mean, when she doesn't like them, she's a very determined woman, and she thought she could cut me off, and she failed.
It's interesting when you say in terms of balance and you describe her as ambitious, but I always kind of feel when the word ambitious is used.
This is where Revenge truly began to sting, and not because of a single shocking claim or headline-grabbing accusation. It wasn't one isolated story designed to provoke outrage or attract attention. The impact came from something far more insidious: repetition over and over again. Multiple sources, former staff, friends, industry insiders, and acquaintances from entirely different periods of Meghan's life told eerily similar stories. Each account, coming from a separate perspective, described the same patterns, the same emotional dynamics, and the same behaviors. It wasn't just that these individuals criticized her, it was that their experiences lined up, creating a clear, recognizable arc. What might have once been dismissed as bias, miscommunication, or personal grudge became a pattern impossible to ignore. Readers didn't need to rely on one sensational claim. They could see the same traits, the same conflicts, and the same tendencies reflected across dozens of first-hand accounts. That repetition transformed individual anecdotes into something larger, something that carried weight. It wasn't about drama, it was about consistency, and that's why the book hit harder than anything Meghan had faced before. Patterns are harder to dispute than isolated incidents, and revenge used them to devastating.
She was bold, but she looks terrific, Kate. And she's intelligent, and she's so convincing and sincere. And we're very, very lucky to have her.
It really drops terribly well when it's used to describe a woman, because I think, which is obviously very sexist, but it slightly alludes to the woman in a negative light, that she's been sort of negatively.
It always started the same way, warm, inviting, almost intoxicating. The intensity was immediate, the connection deep, and the sense of being chosen unmistakable, whether it was a friend, a member of staff, or a professional ally. The opening stage of every relationship shared the same pattern. There was constant communication, long conversations, laughter, shared plans, and an air of exclusivity that made the other person feel special, valued, indispensable. It was easy to believe you were part of something important, something lasting. The warmth was disarming, and then almost without warning the shift came. Messages became sparse, calls went unanswered, meetings and interactions that had once felt effortless suddenly required effort and never happened at all. Access disappeared, replaced by distant silence and an emotional coldness that left the other person scrambling for understanding. There was no warning, no gradual disengagement, no chance to adjust. The withdrawal was abrupt and complete before anyone could even process what had gone wrong. The relationship was over, cut off, excluded, forgotten. No explanations were offered, no context was given. The warmth that had drawn people and vanished entirely, leaving confusion, hurt, and the lingering question of what they had done. Had Danito deserved the sudden total severance?